Hey guys, this is Adam and Steven here from Tech Dive. You've probably seen a lot of our other gaming videos, me whining about stuff and things like that. Steven is going to be helping, obviously, it was a big part of this channel, going to be helping with a lot of video game stuff. And this is me teaching Steven how to use Unreal, which is software he's used a couple of times before, but he's still relatively new to. And I was thinking, because I have a whole nother channel dedicated to video editing tutorials, links in the description below, but I do a lot of tutorials, not necessarily for Unreal, but I do a lot of tutorials. And as I've been learning Unreal myself, I'm not an expert yet, but as I've been learning Unreal myself, I've been seeing a lot of things about the tutorials that I was like, ooh, if I was doing that tutorial, I'd do it differently and things like that. So what I'm hoping to do is, as I teach Steven some of the basics of Unreal, I want to teach you guys with some of the things I struggled with and things like that as I first started learning. Like I said, I'm not an expert. There's definitely people who have more knowledge than me about this, but I'm hoping if you watch this video and follow along that you can kind of go from having, you should have like a little bit of programming knowledge, not a ton, just having programmed a little bit before, having used some more complicated softwares before, familiar with computers. Like if I say .wav file, you should know that that's like an audio file. If those things are not your thing, Unreal is not something you're ready to start learning yet. But if you're there, then hopefully you can follow along, learn from this video with as Steven learns, and we're just gonna be walking him through it, and he's gonna be asking me his natural questions. We're just gonna let you guys sit in over the shoulder on the lesson, and we're hope this goes well. So let's get started.
All right. So you people are seeing my desktop, not Adam's. So if that confuses you at all, you have to deal with it. So, anyways, Adam, how do we begin?
All right, so this is going to pop up for everybody. First thing you'll do is hit in the new project categories. You'll hit games. I'm assuming
not
you're
making a movie.
Yes.
All
okay.
right.
Now there's a lot of different templates, and blank really doesn't. Blank isn't even really blank. And so something I want to explain about the templates is they're super, super, super helpful because most of what you're doing when you're making games is like prototyping stuff, and eventually you'll iterate and kind of have changed everything to be your own personal everything. But Unreal knows that you really just want to get started with something that's got a bulk of what you want, because Unreal's already has a lot going for it. We're going to talk more about that in a second. We're going to pick the top-down tutorial, top-down template, which is where it's going to pre-set up a game where you've got a lot of the components in place to do a top-down, like adventure type game. So it's right there at the bottom row.
This one?
There you go. That one right there.
All right.
And then hit next. And the blueprints, you want to do blueprints. Very few people do it all in C++. Even coders do it in blueprints like I can code in C#, but it's something, blueprints are just so easy. There's a reason why everyone uses them. They're so easy and robust, and there's very little you can't do with blueprints. You wouldn't need them until much, much later in development anyway. Ray tracing disabled unless you're ready for some action. Desktop console, obviously, if you're working on a desktop and making a desktop game, which is what we're doing. And what the starter content is whether or not you got crap to work with. Later, you don't want starter content because you just want what's in your project, and there's a whole export thing, and we're not going to be able to get to that today because we're just talking about using it, not exporting and things like that. But when you export your game, you're going to want to get rid of a lot of the starter content. But right now, sometimes you just need a placeholder. You're going to want to be able to put a chair down. You're going to want to be able to do things that just help you understand what's going on with the game. And the starter content is a way to do that. And then at the bottom below, it shows you where you're going to save your project, just a file path. And then it's going to show you the name of your project when you create it. So this is where you can change it. And you can change it whatever you want, Steven.
It is my project.
There you go.
I guess we'll create, right?
Yep.
Boop. Now we wait.
This should let it relatively quickly when you're in this kind of a project. So this is the basic top-down template, and something I want to note is there's a ton already done for you, because Unreal, even if you started in a basic project, there's still a ton already done for you. So let's just talk about kind of what the panels are for just a second. You see this top left-hand corner, you got your standard file, edit, window, and help. You'll be using those from time to time. Just know that they're there. They have a lot of options in them, but we're not using them right now. There you see place actors. You see a lot of different things you can grab. You're not going to use this a lot. It's just a way to kind of quickly grab things. But we don't need it right now, so you're just going to kind of avoid it. I wouldn't exit out of it. Just know that, yeah, it's not super important. Down below is your content browser. This is actually really important because when you're making a game, you're just going to have a crap ton of files. Eventually, you're going to have 19 different versions of enemies, and you're going to have 47 different types of blueprints for walls, and whatever thing you're doing, you're just going to end up with a ton of garbage, and you're going to have it in a bunch of different files and folders. So start naming it stuff that makes sense right from the get-go. Just a little tip there. I don't, and I always hate myself for it. So if you want to hate yourself a little less, start naming it the right way from the get-go. Down here, we have our files. We're going to get to that in just a second. But those are files that start with the game. Everybody who's clicked this template will have these 3 folders, and then that is a video right there for tutorial overview. Blueprint, it's odd, just ignore it. It's also got a little welcome to Unreal Engine 4 in the top right hand corner. Exit that out. I am your welcome guide today. There in your details panel, when you select things in this little viewer right in the center where you look into the game, you'll see details pop up. Those details are things that are pre-done variables. They're pre-done things like transform is where things are in the world, where it's rotated, can it move, can it not move, all sorts of things. And those are all things that can be talked about over time. What I'm going to try to do in this tutorial is not overwhelm you, Steven. I'm going to try and just let you know like what things are in general, so when you see it, you're not confused, but also let you know what to pay attention to. All those checkboxes and things are just booleans and stuff that are already set into the game world. So they're things that you don't need to worry about them until you do. When you need to worry about them, you find the box, you do what you need to do, but rest of it, you just leave it alone until the time to touch it.
Sounds good.
So when you selected cube, you see there in the top right hand corner, you see all the different cubes.
Yeah.
There's a ton of cubes, right? They all have different names. This is everything that exists in the level, and it includes cubes. Go ahead and scroll on down there. Floor, wall. There's lighting sources. There's light mats, important volumes, skylights. These are all things that are covered very well in other tutorials. Today, I just want you to know that they are there. There are things that are already existing in every single Unreal level that you'll be tweaking over time, but not something you need to worry about right from the get-go. So they're there, but we're not going to touch them really. Go ahead and scroll down again, though. There's one thing that's super important, though, that is called navigation mesh bounds volume. You see it right there? This is something that will trip up a lot of people, though, because it's not readily apparent that the game already took care of this for you. So as you start adding to your level, you're going to notice this is missing. Go ahead and go to your show, which is funny. I just assumed you knew where it was. Right there in the top left-hand corner of your view window, a little lower, yeah, to the right, show. You can click on navigation.
Yep. That one?
Yeah. And so now when you click on your world, everything should light up green. That's everywhere your guy can move. And we're going to talk more about playing the game and moving your guy in just a second. But I want you to know that there are things in the game that already exist. And this is something, it's just a little plane that already exists. And we're going to talk more about it later. But this is an example of like there's a lot already happening. You're walking into the middle of something. You're not starting from scratch like you might be thinking.
Like this would technically be almost a playable demo of a game.
Exactly. Yeah. So go ahead and hit play at that. You saying that? Yeah.
I click and I move.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wowee. Let's see. Let's see paths. Oh, walk around. Here we go. Boom.
And you can walk everywhere the green is. And so those things that say static mesh actor that we saw, all those squares and stuff, They're essentially statues. These have no code associated with them. They're just statues. And so when you drag and drop static meshes into the world like that, it's all it is a statue. There's nothing else you can do with it. It's a statue. It has to be what's called a blueprint to do some sort of actual, and you can upgrade things to blueprints and things like that, but well, just know that's a thing, but we're not going to do that right now. So the world exists right now of statues. You're right there in the center are what's called the player character. You can go to show and turn off the nav mesh bounds now. And do you see that little capsule around the player character? That's your trigger box. Anywhere that touches can be considered the player character. Overlapping. Like I said, a little bit of coding knowledge is needed. Does that make sense to you? Overlapping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the things it notices.
3D space.
Yes. And you can change that and make that really fine-tune overlapping or whatever. Right now, we're just starting with a capsule, and that's all we're going to need. And it starts you with a mannequin. That mannequin's already got animations. So much is already going on. And none of that we're really going to be able to talk about today. Because the thing is, Steven, when a lot of people start learning Unreal, the first thing they're going to do is teach you how to move crap around in the game. And we're not going to do that. We're going to make something and interact with it. So you already walked around. What happened is the game already knows that your mouse is on. It already knows it to move where you click, and it's already looking for clicks. That's things it does not do automatically, things that you would normally have to turn on. I just want to let you know that. So because the game's already doing all those things, we can tap into that and say, okay, if this is clicked on, then do this. If this is clicked on, then do this. So do you see in your folders right there?
What am I looking for in the folders?
Yes. You're looking, go to blueprints. This is where it pre-puts a lot of stuff already in here for you. So go ahead and double click on top-down character and you'll open up its blueprint. I want to show you a little bit about how the blueprints work. This is really where the bread and butter of Unreal is. Right now it says switch cameras if head-mounted displays enabled. See that little bit of code? That's code right there. It says at the beginning, I'll just explain what is happening here. So that way, and you can ask me some questions. Event begin play, that's an event. Code happens only when an event happens. Code doesn't just happen unless it's on an event tick, which is where it executes the code over and over again. But other than that, the game is running constantly on its own, but you don't really interface with that. What you interface with is things that create events, that trigger code. So at event begin play means the code is triggered right at the beginning of play. When the game is turned on, that's what happens. So then it creates a branch. A branch is just an if-then thing where it says if something is true, then do this. If something is false, then do that. And then so what it's asking for has a condition. This condition, click on that. What's connected to the condition? Right there, yeah.
Return value.
Yeah. When you click on that, double click on it. Okay, I'm wrong. Everything works a little differently. So this has some sort of like value associated with it too, whether it's true or false. So that return value, usually if it's your own set variable, that's a pre-programmed variable. So that's why it's a little different. When it's your own variable, we're going to talk more about it in a second. You can make it true or false and change it if it's true or false or whatever. But then that's what it's doing is it's turning on the VR camera if you have your VR headset on, and if you don't have your VR headset on, then it turns on the player camera.
Yep.
And then it scroll around and just look at the rest of the code. This is just code that's already existing in the game. There's all sorts of stuff, and I don't want you to be intimidated by this because. What they've done is they've done a lot of hard stuff for you.
If ticking is enabled.
Ticking is enabled, yeah.
Okay.
And so it's constantly
looking for a head-mounted display.
Yeah, and doing something about that. And so that's just really just how the camera works for the player character, which is just something that is pre-taken care of for you. And they've got it more complicated than it needs to be because they don't know if you're going to be doing something with VR or if you're going to be doing something with just point and click.
I gotcha. Okay.
So go ahead and go to viewport right up there in the top. There's a little tab. So this is what your play character actually looks like. These are things that you can see. You scroll out with the mouse wheel. See, there's little cameras up there too, right? Something that you might not know is the camera, and there's all sorts of things that are part of the player character that aren't actually the player character, what you would think about the player character. The camera is one of them. So, like, there's 2 cameras on there, right? One of them says VR camera, one of them says camera 1. Doesn't that make a lot of sense now? Has it's been picking which camera it's going to show the thing in the code? It's because you actually have 2 different cameras to pick from. And this is all pre-programmed, and normally it wouldn't be this complicated, right? It just started this way. But the spring arm, for example, is something that's on there. That's essentially how the camera attaches to you. There's like a boom pole and a spring arm. There's different ways to attach cameras. None of that you need to worry about right now. But you can see the collider box too, right? It has a
There's that.
Let's see. So the mesh. Click on the mesh there. No, I pointed to the screen. Yeah, right there, up there. See the mesh? That's the mannequin. That's the mannequin that comes with it, and it has all the pre-done blueprints and stuff that Unreal's given you. And see all those things right there. We're going to be fooling with those in a second, but those are like just slots that can be turned off and on and populated and things like that. But that's where it has its matte. A material is like what is coloring it, making it look right. The mannequin is the static mesh that it's actually possessing. It's a player character too, which is different. It's a pawn, and we're going to talk more about that in a second, but it's actually something that can be controlled and possessed. So that is it's got animations that are pre-done. Somebody's already made it look like he walks and breathes and stuff, and then it's calling those animations at a certain time. This is all just information, just so you know that there's a lot already happening that you do not have to worry about until you do. So when you're in a tutorial and you're learning, like, don't be overwhelmed. Just worry about the little part you need to worry about. So right there in the middle, construction script, the view next to viewport. There's nothing in this probably because this is called right when the player is created. So like if you had a player character create itself every time it died, you had it create again. You could have it make something happen even right when it's made. And so like this is how you would have things like randomly generate values and stuff like that right a lot when it's created. But that it might not be the same as event begin play. So that's just there. It exists. And that's where the code is. So inside of every item that's a blueprint, there are things. The viewport is the things, right? The components are what they're called. And then there's a construction script, which is what code runs when it's made. And then there's the event graph, which is what code runs when there's events. Most of what you're doing is putting stuff in the viewport. You're putting components in, and then you're running code in the event graph. And that's the bread and butter of everything you do.
All right.
So are you ready to make code?
Yeah, let's do something.
Okay, do you have any questions or anything?
Not right now. I think I just want to kind of get my hands dirty, and the questions will come up immediately.
Sweet. Okay, go ahead and exit out of this little window here. No, yeah, that one right there. All right. Oh, it's installing Visual Studio. That's cool. So it does sometimes, like, you could, just like in Unity, pull up Visual Studio and actually code and run scripts in the game and stuff, but you really won't have to do that like ever because it's all in blueprints nowadays. So go to right click on your okay, here we go. Content. Go to your content folder, which you'll have to go back in your content browser. Yeah, there we go. And then here, don't worry about making a new folder. We're just going to do it right in the content folder.
That's a dirty way to do it, Adam.
Okay. You can add a new folder if you want.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, if you add new, you can do a new folder there. So go ahead and go to the top. It'll be right there, second from the bottom. And then you can call this stuff. Okay, so now go inside that folder. Now right-click it. Right-click anywhere. and then you go to hit Blueprint Class. And then we're going to make an actor. But before you click on it, I want you to see that the things you see, there's character, pawn, actor, player controller, scene component. These are all things that are set up to respond differently to how the engine works. The majority of what you're going to be doing is pawns and actors. Like a pawn is something that gets controlled, like by an AI or something. A character, it tells you all this stuff. It's a type of pawn that includes the ability to walk around. But an actor is what we're going to be doing. And an actor is just something that it's really a statue that runs code. Think of it that way.
So like an actor would be like, let's say there's a gun on the ground and you want to have your character pick it up.
Exactly. It'd be an actor. And then the gun can run code like shooting bullets and all sorts of stuff. So go ahead and click on actor. Now name this chair. Oh, okay, that's okay. Right click on it, or maybe double click. Usually, I do right click and rename. Your chair, and then so just for form, I've heard a lot of people do anytime they make a blueprint, they call it BP underscore whatever the name of the blueprint is, and that's great for people who are organized. So I don't usually do that. That's probably going to make me a horrible person to work with in the future. But I just want to say it out loud so that way the people following along, they can care about that. But
that's probably a process for like if you're in a game studio and you have multiple people working on the same project.
Exactly.
They know if you look through a file explorer, they would see that that's blueprint chair and this one's chair mesh.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Because you're going to have like 9 things named chair. Exactly. Because, okay, go ahead and go to your content again. We'll leave this folder. I want to show you one more thing. Content, you go to, where is it? Starter content, right there. And then go to props. There is SM underscore chair. It already exists. SM stands for static mesh, which is just a statue. It's essentially just something that it understands as an object. Yep. And some of these, like the chair, kind of pre-packaged with a material it's going to wrap itself with. We're not going to be able to cover materials and wrapping and everything today. I'm trying to keep the scope real nice and simple. But go ahead and go back to content. And then go back to your stuff folder. Now, double click on chair. This is empty. That circle doesn't really exist. It's just like to show you that there is something in space and time.
That's the origin point.
Exactly. Now go to add component right there in the top left-hand corner and type in static mesh, or you can see static mesh right there. Yeah. And then name it chair.
Should I do SM chair? I mean,
no. Well, you could, but then again, you'll have. This is only something that exists. This piece of code and everything only exists inside of the blueprint, so you don't have to worry about like reading this over and over again. And go to the static mesh in the middle of your details folder. One of the things, the sockets over there. Not sockets, but I called it a socket. It's static mesh underneath it. There, you can actually select a static mesh and import it. And type in SM.
Wait, I'm almost down to it.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, go ahead and select it. And then boom, now you have a chair.
Oh.
You just, and then your blueprint, and so this is more than just a statue. This is a chair that can run code. It's a chair that things can happen with.
It's a smart chair, the eye chair.
And now notice that the reason you could get to that static mesh insert thing is because you already made a component that was a static mesh and you had it pre-selected in your components window. So it was looking for that. It already knew. It was like, you're going to want an actual static mesh to exist inside of your little static mesh compartment here. So it's don't worry about simulate physics or anything, but I do want you to know that they are there. This is where you would deal with a lot of your physics collision and everything. We're not going to worry about that just yet because with top down, a lot of the stuff's pretty takes care of itself.
I will say, having years of experience playing Gmod, the way you deal with bringing objects in is very similar.
That's interesting. See, I didn't know you. I never really used Gmod, but that
so
actually
Gmod's
would be
like
helpful.
what if you had Half-Life 2, but you also had full access to the Source engine while you're in Half-Life 2 with your friends, and you just import like trains and whatever the heck you want, build giant robots, and you assign the giant robots animations, just like you do in a real game engine.
Well, so that's pretty much this. That's how it works. So yeah, that's going to be a huge help to you as you're figuring this out. Because really you're just going to need to know where everything is. Yeah. So now this chair exists. Let's go ahead and add something else to the chair. Let's make it a complicated blueprint. Well, first, do you see the little question mark there? Right in the top left-hand corner, this little question mark that says compile. Go ahead and click on that.
It's dirty.
What happens there is there's now code that could exist, but it doesn't really exist. When you hit compile, it pre-writes this code of like, hey, this is the static mesh. This is where it is. This is how it looks. All that code compiles and this exists. And then you can hit, anytime you move anything, it'll need to recompile. But that makes the code in the background exist. And then you hit save next to it. So as always, usually you always hit compile and save right next to each other. It's just a good habit. So then go to add component again.
All right.
And now we're going to type in, go ahead and scroll down. And you'll see box collider, go to spear collision. And then it's got a little tiny spear collision. You can leave it named spear or call it spear trigger or whatever, but this is how we're going to trigger something that happens. It's really tiny. Okay. So go to your details panel, which is on your right.
Yep.
Scroll up. And you'll see transform. And here you can actually, the scale is what we're going to change. Just make that, type in 10. And 10 and 10.
X, Y, Z axes.
There you go. Now scroll back out. Now you have a big collider. So now we know when something is near the chair. Go ahead and hit compile and save. Now, what's really cool, well, you have that we want something to happen when you're near it. So a near it is an overlap. So go ahead and scroll down on your details panel.
Yep.
Keep scrolling. You're going to see a lot of plus signs. So these are different events that can happen to this component, and just the component, not the chair or anything else, just a component inside of it. And what we're going to do is on event overlap. You can use that little double arrows to read it better. It'll say like on component begin overlap, which is second from the top. So what that means is when this component, not the chair, not any other part of it, when this particular component, an overlap starts, then something happens. And then you can also do it when an overlap finishes and all sorts of stuff. But we're just going to hit the plus. Boom. And so what that does is it moved us to the event graph, and that on component begin overlap did not exist. It went ahead and made that exist for us. And the problem is, here's the part where everybody gets screwed up in Unreal. Here's the really hard part, right? You want it to overlap something, but it can't see any other code. It can only see what's in this window and scroll out of this window. The rest of those are just off already. They're just event tick, on event begin play, common ones. You can just delete them if you want. They're not doing anything. They don't have to be there. That means the only code it can see is really the fact that it exists, and it's looking for something to overlap it. And that's not very helpful, because now even if something overlaps it, it's still not going to know what to do. So we're going to have to make it see something. This is why it gets really hard, is because in normal programming, you would just program, like if you were in Unity, you would just type public blah blah blah, public blah blah blah, and everything could be seen by the rest of the game. In Unreal, that's not the case. Things don't just see each other. They don't constantly look at each other's stuff and at each other's variables and things like that. They're all little bubbles of code that you have to kind of force to talk to each other. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay,
so we need it to talk to the player character. So grab the little thing, and we're going to make it execute something. The little, that's a good question. The little, that right there, drag off from it, and then let go. And it's going to say, what do you want to do? And we're going to say cast, and that's essentially look for, type cast. You know, you're going to need to type it. You're never going to find it. And then space, and then 2. No, sorry, the TO. And then our player character is called top-down player character. So hit another space and top-down. Start typing top-down player character. And you can see how this already helps you so much because it shows you so many possibilities. Yeah, top-down character. There you go. Now, that is the top-down character. It says, I looked for it, and I found it. And see, it's going to ask, what am I looking for from this top-down character? Right now, you're just saying the character itself. So what you can do is to actually drag that object to the other actor.
This?
Yeah, not component, other actor. Yeah. There you go. Now they connect. And the reason they connect is because it's saying, so you've done two things right there. You said, and this is where you might have some questions. You said, hey, look for the top-down character.
Yep.
It's an object. What I'm worried about is not a variable. I'm not worried about this, that. I'm just worried about, like, is it the player character object? And then it's, you want to know what's overlapping. So not anything. You don't want anything to overlap and trigger it. You only want the player character to overlap and trigger it. So you both told it that I'm worried about if it's if the player character object overlaps it. So you've defined what you're talking about, and that it's only that can trigger this. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. So now if anything else overlaps it, it won't cause anything to happen. Only player character can. And then go ahead and hit compile and save. And then saves right next to it.
There you go. Save on compile. Always.
Oh, nice. I didn't actually.
That was a random guess. That's years of learning multiple different softwares.
Right. Yeah. I never realized that. So, okay. Well, that's a cool tip.
It's a tip from me, the brand new Unreal player. Seriously, This is the first time ever actually using this engine.
I think that's proof that using complicated softwares is just a skill within itself.
It sucks, let me tell you.
All right, so to cast a top-down character, now we want this to continue executing code. So anything that continues off of this line will continue executing code. The top one is just a normal, like, okay, next. Whoa. Yeah, you can put it anywhere. It doesn't matter as long as the lines connect. This is just for your sake of seeing what you're doing.
Visual representation of coding.
Yes, which is so amazing. It's so much faster. It's like the compiler's your friend. If you've ever done any other coding, anything else, the compiler hates you. But the compiler loves you and wants to help. So cast failed. You never really worried about that because that's just like, oh, if I couldn't find it, then blah, blah, blah. And we're not worried about that. And then as top-down character is a way you can grab extra variables and stuff. We're also not worried about that. So just drag off from the top again.
A little bit sensitive. All right, what am I typing?
And then you're going to hit play, sound effect, or play sound, and it already says at location. Go ahead and click that. So there's more to know. Just note, there's more to know about making sound effects, but there's some pre-cached ones we can grab just to know that our code is firing. So just go ahead and grab any one of those that looks...
Let's see. There's so many.
Okay, and so what you want to do is you can see
what's the difference between cue and wave? What's that mean?
Exactly. So the wave is the actual sound file, and the cue is actually the playing the sound file. So the cue is what you're looking for. The sound file exists, but the cue is essentially a nicer, prettier, packaged way for it to understand the sound file. There's lots of stuff you can do to the cue that you can't do to the wave itself. So you always select the cue. Whenever you're playing a sound, you always select the cue, and eventually when we get to sound effects you'll learn how to make the cue. So it's just like a right click, create cue, and then boom, it makes a cue, and then you can edit the cue and everything else. But so now compile again and it'll automatically save it, and then play your game. No, sorry. Hit stop. I realized something. We don't actually, the chair exists, but it doesn't actually have any place to be. So go ahead and minimize this window here. Now you can just drag the chair into the world. This is actually the first time you actually need the editor.
Okay.
So it's right there. It's called chair in the bottom of your content browser. You just made it. And you'll see there's the trigger box. You want to put it somewhere where the trigger box isn't already touching the character. There's a trigger box, there's a chair, there's everything else. So those arrows, the blue is how high it is. It kind of snaps to the floor already. It relates
to these transforms in terms of location. See, the blue is Z, the green is Y, and the red is X.
Exactly. And then the rotation's the same. So there's a little rotation button, these little tiny buttons in the top right-hand corner of your little viewport window. The second button.
This one?
No, the second one ever of those little ones. There you go. Select that. Now you change to rotating. You can rotate the chair. And then there's another one right next to it. Hit that, and then you can make it fatter.
Long
and everything.
chair.
Control Z is very nice here. Yeah, and then if you hit the center of any of those, it kind of does all of them together. So you could make the whole chair bigger and smaller. So now you can play the game.
All right, here we go.
Did you hear anything?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't hear anything. So
I don't know if you can get sound through the Discord or not. I don't know.
That's okay. I'm not worried about that. So as long as you heard something, then that means we did it right.
So question.
Yes.
Is there code on the back end? I guess it's probably in the queue, right? Where when I walk within this radius, it only plays it once and doesn't just play it forever.
Because that's why you say begin overlap. Not while overlapped.
Okay, very important distinction.
Yes.
So maybe if you want the chair to turn orange or green or whatever when you're near it, that would be while overlapped.
Yes. Or what you would actually do, an easier way, is you would do, when you begin overlap, you would create a variable on the material. I'm just spitballing this out. You don't have to memorize it. You'd create a variable on the material that would change the color or multiply the color, whatever, to make it glow. And then you would trigger that variable to change when it overlaps. And then you would trigger it to change back when you end the overlap.
How complicated is the code to make it not overlap the sounds if you walk over the border multiple times while it's playing?
So what I've done in the past, like with that little game you played, it didn't do it perfectly because I was just kind of scratching that one out. But I put a little timer on it. So let's go ahead and do that. That's a great question. Sure. Let's go ahead and go in there and do it. So go ahead and double click on your chair. There you go. Now go to...
Can I put this somewhere?
No, we need to see it.
Right. I was thinking if you have multiple monitors, you probably drag this over to your other monitor.
Yeah,
so
that's
you
what
always
I
have a
do.
Object thing up. Anyways,
chair. Okay, so we're gonna have to create a variable. So this is a great thing to do.
Perfect.
So right there in the left hand of your little My Blueprints thing, a little further to your left, hit the drop down arrow there. Okay, it's got variables. Hit Add Variable. And then hit let's call this delay. Just type delay. And so delay is what a Boolean is. And so do you know what a Boolean is?
I used to.
Right, I understand. So integers would be numbers, whole numbers. And so if you were doing a number variable, you'd make an integer. A Boolean is just whether or not it is true or false, and you'll be using a lot of Boolean. Okay, so you got a Boolean now. This is where it gets a bit complicated, but this is actually what the bulk of what you're doing in Unreal looks like.
All right, question.
Yes.
So, it shows components delay here, right? Is it actually on any of these things in this event graph, or is it just kind of like another, I guess it's a variable?
It just exists as a component. It is a component, and it's not code. But if you drag it out, go ahead and drag it out. It'll ask if you want to get it or set it. So set it means you can do something to it, or get it means you can refer back to it. So we'll go ahead and go to set, and then go put it at the end of play sound, and then go ahead and drag to it. There you go. And now turn it on, and then drag off of set value again. And we're going to make a delay because we want this to turn on the variable and then turn off the variable, because this is how we're going to check and see if we're going to play the sound. So type delay, and then select delay. This is just like, hey, wait. Yeah. It's a wait command. Just type 2 seconds. There you go. That duration, that's automatically a second. Now, anything that's got a drag off like that, you can make a variable. So you can make the delay change based off something else, and then it will always change everything that's dragged off from that variable. You
have to assume that it is the dumbest thing ever, and you have to baby step it through every single thing. Like baby step it to say, hey, play a sound, but also set a delay.
Yeah.
And also, this is how much the delay is.
Yes, it assumes nothing. And so, and just to point out, too, what you're setting when you set the Boolean, all it says is, like, I'm going to set something called delay to true. And that's all it knows. Is something called delay is now true, and it doesn't care what it is or that we named it delay or anything.
So once these delay requirements are met,
then
it goes back.
No.
Nope.
It doesn't loop back or anything. All it
Do
does
I want this to loop back?
Nope. Go ahead and drag off again. Now hit set, type set, and then delay, space delay, and there you go. There you go. At the very bottom it says set delay. It knows that you have a variable that you can set already, so it shows you that in this executable action. So go ahead and select it. It's the same as you drag and drop. Now it assumes that you'd probably want to set it to false now. So now what will happen is when it runs the code, it'll set the variable to true, wait 2 seconds, and then it'll set it to false. So now we can have the game check if it's true before it runs the code, because if it is true, then it doesn't want to run it again. So go ahead and hit compile, and then we'll add a branch. So branch, go back to the beginning. We're going to add this at the very beginning. Give yourself some space. Actually, we're going to do this after you cast. So you want to go ahead and see if it's being so that is before it plays the sound. Go ahead and right click on that white thing, the white connector. I don't know the actual name for it, just the line. No, right where the arrow is. Things I wouldn't think to say. And then break link, and then drag off of it and type branch. And then if the branch is false, go ahead and connect it to play sound. Now, go ahead and get delay in your components over there. Drag it, hit get. You probably want to drag it underneath, but it doesn't matter. You get underneath it, put it next to the branch, like right under it. And then drag that little red dot to the little red dot and branch. See, now it says, hey. So it says, hey, what's overlapping me? Is it the player character? Okay, now not only is it the player character overlapping me, but I can see the player character too. I can look at its code. So then it's happy. And then it says, now let me check something. Is delay true? And then if it says yes, then it does nothing. If delay is false, then it goes ahead and plays the sound, and then it turns delay on, and then it turns it back off. So that way it shouldn't do it over and over again. So go ahead and hit compile and test it out.
Let's minimize, play. All right, so here I am, walking to the chair.
Is it working?
Yep, it is working.
Yeah, and that's not a perfect. There's probably better ways to do it. You can set it to where it's like if player vector is, if it's looking at the chair, or if it's so many feet from the chair. The more math and everything, you can always iterate, and you can always make things more exact. That's just a quick and dirty way to say, like, just don't do it over and over again.
Yeah, wait 2 seconds before you can do it again. Cool.
Yeah, and
all
then
right. Can I ask questions?
Yes, please do.
All right, so. Delay. So when it's asking about this condition here, it's looking at this condition here, right?
No.
Delay.
No. So go ahead.
It's just looking at.
Let me fix this. Go to that. Click on delay.
Yep.
No. I'm sorry. This is why it's confusing. This is a great question. Click on the variable delay. Actually, you're in the game. You can't edit the game while you're in it. So go ahead and hit stop. Yeah, there you go. Now go back into the chair. Now click on delay, change the name of that variable, which you can just do it right there.
Delay time.
Change it. Could just call it fill. Doesn't matter. And so now it should be a little more clear what's happening. It says the delay is just it waiting to run the code, because you just don't want it to turn it instantly on and off again. So essentially we're making it on for 2 seconds. So fill is now true for 2 seconds, then fill is false after that. So we just want it to not run the code if fill is true, and we don't want fill to always stay true or always stay false.
All right, so let me follow through this line of logic.
Do it.
The way my brain thinks about it, right? So we overlap with object. It looks at the character. Character says, yeah, I'm near the object. It says, okay, let's move forwards.
Okay, something you missed, and this is super important. The casting, it has to look at the character code to see that it's an object. So if you don't cast, it won't even know if it's an object and the right object. So it's both it's both looking at the code and it's seeing if it's the object that overlaps it. Because you can look at the code without seeing if it's the object that overlaps it. So it's doing two things at once. That's tricky. That's the trickiest thing about Unreal.
Okay. And so then it goes to here, and it defaults to false because fill hasn't been activated yet, right? So then, since it's false, it plays the sound. And then because it played the sound, it now sets fill to true. And that's set for 2 seconds until it's set back to false.
Yeah.
So then if you walk back within that circle within 2 seconds, it'll go to here, and then you'll say, oh, fill is true now. So then it goes to true, and then nothing happens.
True doesn't go anywhere. And so if
my
it
brain
doesn't go anywhere, it dies.
My brain is happy by this now.
Yay! Yay!
I get this.
That's what I want.
This line to be flat, though. Can we change that? I want this line to be flat.
Yeah. There's so
I'm
again.
joking with you.
So the people who do this stuff awesomely.
Oh, I'm pretty nerd out about making everything look.
They do great jobs of making their little event graphs look spectacular. Mine look like absolute filth. Because I'm just like, I just want to know if my logic works. Yeah, I get
that.
Yeah, this is why we can work well together. You can fix my stuff.
I'm a very neat and organized person when it comes to my softwares.
And I'll try and be neat when we're working on stuff together. I'll try and stay neat because when I know someone else is looking at it, when it's just me, I'm like, I see the lines. That's all I care. But yeah, and that's visual programming in Unreal. We created a variable. You created an event, so you triggered code. You triggered code based off an action in the game. There's a lot of cool things that happened here. But we're gonna have to finish up for today. There's a ton more to cover. But that's the basics. Yeah. Let me give a little outro, then I'll leave you to ask questions again, and then we're done. Important to remember, there's a whole lot already happening in the game. There's already physics, there's already collisions, there's already all this stuff already happening. It's just you tapping into it and when you tap into it. The nav mesh bounds, if you started a new level, the most likely problem you'll run into is not setting down. It's any old nav mesh bounds will work, but if you don't lay down a nav mesh bounds, this was true for VR. This is true for this. This is true for anything that your player character runs around in. If you have no nav mesh bounds, it doesn't know where it's okay to walk.
Gotcha.
And so that's something that it's a very big beginner mistake. I ran into that mistake like 8 times before I finally figured out what's going on. I would like remake a VR level and then I couldn't move and I'd be like, I broke the code. I didn't break the code. I just didn't add the right thing. Yep. And I was ill about that for a long time. Okay, so your character walks, moves, all that. That's all pre-done in Unreal. It's all there. Every single blueprint is something that is a little capsule of code, a little capsule of both items and code, which is called components. So you have a pile of components and a pile of code, and that's all in a blueprint. You make blueprints talk to each other by casting to each other. So the player character can cast to something, or the chair can cast to the player character, and all that happens on an event. And so an event is whether it's on click or on overlap or on whatever. When that happens, You then trigger something, and then whatever code you trigger, it will go and go and go and go and go until you don't add any more code. Any questions?
Just to reiterate, I guess.
Yes.
So, if you had... So basically, the only way for two blueprints to see each other is the cast event.
That's a trick question. The answer is yes and no. There's another way to do it too, where essentially you look at it and you grab a copy of everything it has and look at something, look at the copy. So there's two different ways to communicate, and you'll find out that some ways work better than others. What I did, and that we'll cover that another time. I did is I figured out that sometimes I want to look at it and just grab a copy of all its crap and look at the copy, and sometimes you want to just cast to it and grab something from the cast and move on. And you'll just kind of get used to what Unreal likes better for different scenarios, because it gets kind of tricky. But there's really two different ways to do it. But you're right. The hard part is the code doesn't see each other, and that's something I think a lot of people don't realize, especially because coming from Unity, it does see each other. If you called it a public, I forget the term, but
basically like an object or something.
Well, yeah, it's like the code itself is like a public
it's like a big open book.
Yes, and you can make it private to where the code can't read and edit other pieces of code. Only that snippet of code can read and edit that snippet of code. But Unreal starts out where everything's private, and making things public in Unreal doesn't work quite the same way as it does in any other coding project ever. Like I've made Vegas plugins and stuff, and public stuff it just works, right? It all just works. And so you get into Unreal and it doesn't. The blueprints are working fantastically, but nothing talks to each other. And you're like, what is going on? That's why. You have to like tell it to look at something in particular every single time.
Okay. If I drag and drop another chair.
Yep. You got a carbon copy.
All right. Oh, I'm actually still playing.
Yeah, so it was fake.
There we go.
It wasn't real. And that's why it's important to make a nice, perfect blueprint before you drag them all over the level.
Yeah.
Which is what I did with my axe game when I made a nice little target counter, and then I figured out a way to make it better, but I already had like 19 different counters connected up, and I was like,
uh-huh.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So
makes me really appreciate complex games and how well they're programmed and how they work. Yeah. That's.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments if you like this. If you do, we'll keep publicly teaching and talking about it. If you don't, then we'll move on and just start making games, and we'll shut up about the learning stuff.
Yeah, these are basically my personal lessons with Adam on how to make games in Unreal, and we're just sharing them with you guys.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, thanks, Steven. I guess we'll see everybody later.
See ya.